Hello, 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 and welcome to part two of the Happy Days quilt. And so this quilt is going to be a throw size quilt, and it is called Happy Days. And the pattern is by Tiffany Bynum of Straight Stitching. It is a wonderful, colorful quilt, and it is made completely of flying geese blocks. And we'll talk about a little bit of that before we get started with this part two. And this part two is all about the sashing. So the quilt blocks themselves have already been constructed, and we worked on that in a previous video. And it has been made out of these blocks, which are called flying geese. I have some of the blocks left over. I might make a pillow or something out of them, but these blocks absolutely are easier to make according to the pattern. And again, I did a video on these where I showed how to make one block, and then it's the same thing for all the blocks that you need in the quilt. And the directions that Tiffany gives for her quilt show you how to make 4 of these at one time. So back in the day, we used to make them one at a time, and then we've learned now how to make these 4 at a time so that the process goes a little bit faster because there's a lot of flying geese here. And if we can save time on making them, that makes us happier people. So I have all the blocks. When I shared in a previous video, I shared with you that I used fabric from my stash. And the fabric that I used for my stash, there were only 7 colors that I picked out. This fabric is called Glam by Patrick Lose, and he absolutely, I love, like he and I are like we're besties because he loves color and I love color. So he has collections up to 40 colors in a collection when he makes whatever collection that he's making. So I love them, but I only picked out 7. I don't know why. It was on a shop hop, and I said, give me the 7. And I don't know if it was a half yard. It was a half yard each. So that was a lot of money to spend for, just that. Hi, how are you? So very easily, I just, bought the 7, and then I was upset because this one calls for 8. So these are the blocks that I've created for the pattern that is called Happy Days by Straight Stitching, Tiffany Bynum, and it is a confident beginner quilt. So I have all the blocks. They're done. And okay, I have some threads that are still sticking out, and that's fine. I'll trim those up later. So what we are doing, thank you, now is we are adding the sashing to the block. So the sashings have been pre-cut, and this is a paid pattern, so I don't discuss measurements in the pattern, but these are already pre-cut, and we need to attach them. This is the throw size quilt. There are 16 blocks that I'm making for the throw size, and so the sashing will go in between the blocks. And just anybody who's new to quilting, let me move these out the way. I could take the blocks and line them up like this without sashing. And that's perfectly fine. So if you're working on your quilts and you're deciding that you want this to look this way, you absolutely change your pattern. One of the things that I continuously say in most of my quilt constructions is patterns are a guide. They're not a must. You can make your quilt look any way you want. So I can either butt these up this way, or I can add a sashing in between it. And I always like to make sure I have the right side. And this is the sashing in between. So it just doesn't place the colors one right next to the other. It breaks the blocks up. Or you could have it where they butt up against each other. That's your choice. So her pattern calls for the sashing. I'm going to do the sashing. In between the 4 blocks, there's going to be a piece of sashing. So what I can do is attach the sashing to each one of the blocks of 3 of the 4 that are in the row, and then join those together. Okay, so I need this to happen. And we'll put one together just because it'll make sense to see it that way. And what I like to do is just construct an entire row. I also have a question. And like I have to see across the screen. So if I miss it, but I'll see if I can answer the question for you. We're just going to take these and line them up. So these should have been squared up. I use what I like to call these are rulers, but they're squares. And this is a great way to line things up. Let me slide up for a second. I heard about that kind of triangles I missed the comment about the stitching. Let me see if I can pull that up. Just so I can see it. Because I missed the comment. And I don't like to miss comments. Okay, switch account. Let's see. We're going to go to my other account. And there we go. Let's see. Oops. We're going to go to, and let me turn that down. Okay, so now I can see it. I heard about this kind of triangle stitching. It's said to bring good luck in many cultures. Oh, okay. And I'm not familiar with that, but I am, but okay. I'm for that one. And then yes, you could absolutely make this one in green. And I would love to see what that looks like in green. So that's actually a good idea. Okay. So I'm straight now. Know where the video is someone teaching about. Okay. Do you know where a video is? So I could look, and I have no problem with that, but I don't know because I don't necessarily follow that. The videos, so you could do a search for it, and then there are plenty of them that will pop up. And let me not say I don't follow it because I do. I'm just not following that right now. Okay. So we're going to line our sashings up. We are going to have a total of 4 blocks, but one of the blocks isn't going to get stitching because we're only doing them on the inside of the blocks, not on the outside. On the outside, we're going to put long sashing strips. So we don't need them on the outside. We only need them on the inside. So we're going to take these to our machine. Now I will show you. I am running out of thread for this bobbin. I mean, for this spool. I do have another spool to use, so I need to pay attention to the top thread. Usually we pay attention to the bottom thread, but I do have to pay attention to the top thread because I'm going to run that spool out. Our measurements for the blocks should be the same measurements for the sashing. So we make sure that our blocks are trimmed to the size that we need. And then we're going to take it to the machine and we are going to stitch at 1/4 inch. And today is about the sashing. It's all about sashing. So we will still have to attach the borders, but today is all about stashing. So we can chain piece these, and that just means that I'm not going to break the thread. I'm just going to sew one after the other after the other. Now I could turn my fabric around so that I see the seams on the other side instead of lifting it the way that I am, just to make sure the seams are going in the right direction. But sometimes they want to push back on me. They like to tussle, and it's easier for me just to make sure that they're flat by doing it this way. But you can sew them down however you prefer. So this is the last one. Thank you for tapping the like button. Please make sure that you are commenting, liking, and subscribing the video so that I know to continue to add additional videos. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 are done. Now I can go through and do the rest of them if needed. And if I did this correctly, okay. So for me, my focal point is the orange and the red. So every time I'm going to make sure these are in the right direction, I'm looking for that orange and that red to be in the same top row. Okay. I always say if my stitches don't cross, that means they don't overlap. I can absolutely sew these together without taking them to the iron every time. Okay, so now I have the piece attached. I'm going to go to the next one, and it has its piece down here. And this is going to give me the sashing in the center of those two pieces. If you're not used to holding it a certain way with your hands, you can absolutely clip. I feel like it takes a little longer to do that, and I feel like I'm usually accurate when I do it, so I don't use clips. But you can absolutely use clips if you need to. Did my thread come out of there? Because that doesn't sound right. Yep. When you hear that little that little noise that I just heard, then something's wrong. So stop, check your machine. It just came out of the tension arm, and I just need to, I don't know how that happened, but I just need to get that back in there. Okay, good. Otherwise, all it's going to do, because the tension will be off up top, it's going to cause it to nest, and I don't want that. And that just means the thread to jumble up in one spot because it won't be even. There we go. So that noise stops. And again, we're going to sew a 1/4 inch. Okay, that one's done. This is going to get attached to this, and then I need another block for this end. So I can go ahead and attach that, and this will be the 4. So we have 4 rows of 4 that need to be done. And one of the things that I like to say, again, it's redundant. So when it's redundant, for the purpose of the video, I will do one all the way through, and then if someone has to jump off, or if you just need to see it quickly, you can see it, and then I go back and do the other ones. That way you're not sitting for the entire thing to see it to come together. You can see it in part. You're like, oh, okay, I get it, sashing. And then you can move on from there if you need to look at another video. So you can see that the sashing is in between the two. As much as possible, I want to make sure that I'm not cutting my points off. Sometimes, however, it happens. And let me hold that up so you can see it. So sometimes my points will get buried in my seams, and so they will be cut off a little bit. And if I'm not okay with that, I can go back into my stitches and I can adjust it. For me, there are going to be some imperfections in the quilt, and I'm not worried about the fact that some of them get cut off. But to each his own. If you need to adjust, you adjust. If not, you can leave it the way that it is. So I have the end that's not going to get sashed. And then I have one for this so far, and I have this one open. On this one, right now, both ends are not sashed, and it's just sashed in the center, because this one is going to get connected here, and we're going to sash it here, and that will finish the row. So we'll line these up again, and I'll show it from this side this time. So this time I am starting with the seams up. What happens when you have the seams up is that there's an advantage to this, because it allows me to see my points better. So if I want to make sure that I am getting the points in there as best as I possibly can, then having the seams faced up allows me to see that a little bit better. And if I need to adjust, I can adjust. But I just need to make that sure that I'm careful with this, because sometimes your seams, if they're pointing in this, going this way, when they go under the foot of your machine, it'll push it back. So you just have to make sure that you are holding onto the seam with your finger as it is going underneath of the foot. So the other way, I don't have to think about it necessarily and hold it down. This way I do. It's not the end of the world either way that you do it. Oh, you're back. Thank you. Twisted Beauty. Okay. And so then, let me see, in between. So again, I didn't hit that point there, but you can see it kind of cut off just a little bit here. But again, I'm not worried about that. That's just me, because I'm okay with something not being perfectly perfect. If I were putting this in a show, if I were selling this, at a price that required it to be perfect, I'm going back in and fixing some things. If I am gifting this like I usually do, then yeah, the person that's getting this is not going to sit back and say, girl, you do realize that point was cut off. This is the back. All the sashing is on. Again, we don't have them on the ends. And you can press your seams towards the sashing, or you can choose to press your seams open. How you press your seams is up to you. You'll see that there are some spaces where I did press them open, and you'll see some seams where I press them to one side. So you can have mixed in a quilt if you choose. And they say, like, the quilt police, look, I'm not the quilt police, so I'm not going to tell you that you're doing it wrong. I will say that sometimes there is a better way to do it. And so I'll share with you let me see, let me turn this on this side, so because you could see it through the light. I believe you can see it. Can you see it? I know I can see it. No, you can't really see it. What's going to happen is that I can see the seams on this side, and I think you can see them right here. So they're going to shine through your lighter fabric. And when they shine through your lighter fabric, then you're going to see that. And I just like to make sure that there's consistency. So if it's shining through on this side, I want it to shine through on this side. When you add the batting to it, it'll be more pronounced. To me, it's not like you can't avoid it, because there's so much well, this is even white. There's so much light background. This is actually gray. There's so much light background here that it's going to show one way or the other. You're seeing it here with the blue. I could have pressed this towards the blue, but I wouldn't have avoided it right in here because it's white on either side. So this won't make a difference here. So for me, I kind of like the consistency throughout of seeing these evenly, and I'm okay with that. But again, it depends over time as you're making the quilt, which way you prefer it to go. So if I have it going this way, sometimes for me, if I open up the seam, then I'll have it on this side as well, because right now there's no shine through on the other side of the seam. Again, that's personal preference. So I go through from the back of the quilt and I just press. When I finish a quilt, I will tend to iron. While I'm making the quilt, I press. So the pressing is going to help flatten the seams. Ironing tends to stretch your fabric. And what we don't want to do is to make it wonky or make it warp. So that's why we usually don't press. We don't want to stretch the fabric. Then I can turn this over because the seam is going in the direction I want it to go in. Sometimes our seams will kind of fold a little bit. So then I like to press on top just to make sure that I have a nice flat seam. Okay. Hello, 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 everyone. We are working on the Happy Days quilt. This is part 2, and we are working on sashing today. So in between each of the blocks, I have fabric so that the blocks are not butted one up against the other. It helps to lengthen the quilt. It helps to separate the blocks. And sashing is a choice. Sometimes if you only have so many blocks, a great way to make a bigger quilt is by spacing them out and using sashing. Sashing typically could be anywhere from 1.5 inches, typically, and you could make it as wide as you want. But typically it's between 1.5 inches to about maybe 3 inches. And that's like typically, I mean, on average. But you can make it whatever thickness you want, but just understand the thicker the sashing, the wider apart the blocks are going to be. Okay. So here is row 1. It is finished, and the sashing is in between each block. There's nothing on the end. And so then we're going to finish the other 4 blocks, and then what happens is we're going to add sashing between the blocks so that we can connect the rows. So the next thing that I'm going to work on in this video, of course, is to do the second row. This is row 1. So I'm going to do the second row so I can connect them. So that way it'll keep the video short, because then I'm doing the same repetitive thing again for the next 2 rows. So that way you'll see how we're connecting everything, and then you would just do the same thing over and over again until you finish whatever size quilt you're making. So we'll slide that out the way, and we'll work on the next set of 4. So right now I only need 3, because only 3 of them need to start off with the sashing. And for anybody who came in after I started, we're working on the Happy Days quilt, and it is by Straight Stitching, and they're made completely up of flying geese. So we could place our blocks together like that, and we could butt them one right up against the other and make the whole quilt. For this particular pattern, we're adding sashing. And again, this is personal preference. A pattern is a guide. It is not the end all be all. If you are making something for a friend and they say, make this pattern the way that you see it, then it becomes the end all be all. If you are making something and you're using creative license, you can decide, I don't like the sashing. I want to butt these up against each other, and you can make more blocks and then just have it look like that. I'm following the directions for the pattern, so I'm adding sashing so it looks like this. There is a sash in between the bottom and the top, or side by side, block 1, block 2. So in order to do that, we're just going to add this on, and I'm putting it in the order that it needs to go in, because I like to be honest. And when I'm being honest, I like to share that I make mistakes, and I make mistakes often. So this way, it allows me to make sure that this is going in the order that I want it to go into. It also allows me to see that I'm placing my sashing the right side up, or the right side down, the pretty side down, because this is like a tone on tone, if you will. And so what happens is, because it's so light, it almost looks the same on the front that it does on the back. And I don't want to sew it on the wrong way. So I just make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be, and I'll check it again at the machine. But everything is face down. Those sashings are face down. And you can see that I want the orange and the red to all be going in the same direction, and I want them to be on the top row. And you could turn your blocks any which way you like. So you don't have to have those facing this way. This is what I'm choosing to do. Now, the pattern itself follows that same logic and theory, but again, it's up to you. And understand, if you make this quilt pattern, you can absolutely make this completely scrappy and use more than 8 colors. So you could use, and somebody said it earlier in the comments, they were like, oh, I'd like to see an all green one. You could do 8 shades of green. You could do 4 shades of green. You could use 6 shades of green. So you could do this any way you like. You're still going to need 8 flying geese to make the block, whatever you do. But that's totally up to you how you want to do that. So we're going to take this now back to the machine. We'll flip this one over again. Again, it's personal preference. I will tell you, I will flip them which way makes sense, but you do want to make sure that you're using a 1/4 of an inch. If I have the seams up, I can guarantee that, or I can not guarantee, but I can try as much as possible to make sure that I'm getting my points as pointy as I possibly can. Like I said, doesn't always work out that way, but I can try. And I can see those seams a lot better to hopefully make sure that it happens a little bit better than it would happen if I have them facing the other way. But as you can see, I have to stop at the seams and make sure that the foot is not pushing the seam in the other direction. Because if it pushes it in the other direction, it's going to twist it. Well, don't get in trouble for being on the phone in the middle of the night. I don't want that for you. I am a school administrator, and one of the things that I try to teach my students is not to be defiant. So follow those rules, whether you like them or not. So we're doing block number 2 of 4. Okay, and this is block 3 of 4. Okay. So if we place these in order again, we have the sashing now between the 2 blocks, and I can attach these 2 blocks together so that blocks 1 and 2 are together, and then we'll clip and put blocks 3 and 4 together. Okay, and we'll get block 4. And the great thing about chain stitching is like I can just snip it off. This one is still on the machine. Okay, this is block 4. Sashing is between, and we can attach. Hi from Ireland. Loving your work. Thank you. Oh my goodness. One day, hopefully soon, I'll get to visit Ireland. It's on my bucket list. Okay. And let's put that one. Okay. So again, we don't need one on the end because this is going to get a border. So that end is open. The sashing is ready for the next block, which is on the machine. We're keeping our oranges going in the same direction, and this end doesn't get a sash. So now we'll have 2 done. Thank you. We'll have 2 rows done of the 4 that we need to make. And again, we don't need to do a long video, right, on how to do the whole thing because it's the same thing over and over again. So this is very repetitive. There's not much that is going to change. We're going to follow the same method. Okay. So we've made rows 1 and 2. We'll press these. And then it's the same thing for rows 3 and 4. We're going to add the sashing. I'm going to make sure that my orange and red are at the top of the row. And then I'm going to add the sashing in between at the end of those 3 blocks, and then attach the blocks together, and then bring in block number 4 to finish off that row. So same process throughout to make sure that everything is going the way that I planned it to go. So I'm pressing my seams toward the sashing. And again, sometimes this is personal preference, the way that you want it to go. So I'm never, and sometimes the directions will tell you which way to press it, and you may not want to press it that way. Sometimes the directions will tell you to press the seams to one side because the creator of the pattern likes it to go to one side. And some pattern people will tell you to open up the seams, and other people will let you make your decision. Your quilt's your choice. The goal is to make sure that your seams lay as flatly as possible and that you have very little bulk. Because when there's a lot of bulk, then when the long armor goes over them, or you go over them long arming it, then sometimes when you're going over that bulk, you will end up possibly breaking a needle. For me, I feel like I don't have that problem as much because when I get to the bulky parts, I can feel it or see it, and then I go slow or I go around them. So if I'm meandering, I will meander, root around it like a pothole. But sometimes potholes are so big, or because of the way you're going, you can't avoid it. And you know, sometimes when you hit a pothole, your car goes boom, and it is what it is. And sometimes you end up with a flat. And again, I don't need, even though I may not pick the iron up, and then you see me just kind of move it from space to space, I'm not moving it all around, mushing. I'm just kind of moving it from one location to the other, and I'm not just kind of pushing it around to mush up that fabric. Okay, and what I mean by that is I'm not doing this. So this is ironing. I want to press, and I'm just moving it, like pushing those seams over a little bit, and it has to be down to have that happen, and then just letting it sit to get this as flat as possible. Okay. So I need something in between to do the sashing in between, but you can see the row here. Let me not knock my water over. So this could be row 1, row 2, it doesn't matter. And let me do that. And then you see that here. Okay. So this is the way it looks so far. But of course, I need sashing in between here. Now I'm going to be honest with you. I prefer to just make one long strip. And then just sew everything together. I wanted to do it the way the pattern suggests, which was to create these like little corner squares. And so she puts a corner square in here, and then she does another sash, right? And she does that all the way through. And in my mind, made, before I decided to do this, I was like, why? When I can just take, and I'll show you what I mean, because I have a strip. Like, why piece this together? And that's just, like, that was the thinking that I had. Need 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. just to make sure I have them before I get started with the next part. Okay, good. Okay, so we're straight with this. I just want to make sure I have them. And let me pull this over. So this is going to be used for the outside border, but I'll just show you what I mean. My attitude was, why not just take a strip and then place it here, right? And then just sew it straight through. Why do all that piecing? In my mind, when I decided to do it the way that she has it designed, sometimes what happens is we stretch the fabric. So if we use a long strip, then we could end up with this being off-centered a little bit. It wouldn't be that much, might be like that. Let me not exaggerate. And it just looks misaligned, and it's not the end of the world. So because you then have to find midpoints to fold this in half, because with this, you're going to have to find the center and mark it. And we're going to have to do that for the outside border. So when I do the video for that, you'll see it better, but I would have to mark this as a center, and then I would have to fold this in half again and mark this for the quarter space, and then I would have to mark these for the center, mark these for a quarter space, and that's a little bit more challenging, not difficult, but challenging to do. So when I thought about it, I said, well, isn't that genius that instead of doing that, once I sew all these together, all I need to do is line up the seams. And when I line up the seams, everything else will be lined up. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. So I didn't think about that, but absolutely that works. So that was like, okay, so then we need to do it that way. So I have my 2 rows, and I will set these aside for a second because we're going to make that sashing for in between the rows. So I have, and I want to make sure I have them facing the way they should be. The same way the blocks are done. I'm going to have 4 of these, and 3 of them are going to get these squares. But when I attach them, the squares will be in the center, and there won't be squares on the ends because we won't need them. So I only need 3 of them. So we'll sew these together, and then we'll get that whole unit put together again. We can chain these again, one right after the other, like an assembly line. I can do a little bit of a back stitch, so you don't necessarily see me doing that. That's just going to make sure that the blocks don't come apart when I'm pulling on them. Not that we're tugging, but there is going to be some pull just with the way that we handle them. Okay, and then the 4th one doesn't need it. Thank you for liking the video. I appreciate you. And then we can attach them together. And we can still chain. And then now I can add the 4th one in because I'm going to make sure the square's in the center. Okay, so we have the square. This needs to be connected. And then this one has the square in the center. So I'm just going to add this one on to finish out that row. And then we'll press it. Now, when I was pressing the squares the blocks, remember I pressed the blocks towards the sashing. So in this case, I want to press the blocks, the little blocks, I'm going to press these. So I'm not going to, oops, I'm not going to press these this way like I did with the other ones. This time I'm going to press them towards the sashing. And that's going to help me to do what's called nesting. So instead of going this way this time, I'm going to go this way. If I open the seams, I would just open the seams. But this time I'm going to go this way. What happens is that all the bulk is going to be here. So it's going to create a little bit of a lift. For the blocks, all the bulk is going to be on this side. So then when I go to put the seams together, they're going to lock, and we call that nesting. So we have 3 of these to press. Remember, we're going this way. And I think for me, it always helps to go a certain way, because then you can just remember, like, this is the way I go, this is the way I go. Sometimes when I was quilting in the past, I would just pick a direction, and then when I got it to the machine, I was like, hey, they're both going in the same direction. So just strategically thinking about the directions they go in and being consistent helps. Now I'm gonna show you what I did. I messed up. So what I did was I attached, and you can't see it because I wasn't paying attention. Out comes the seam ripper. I actually attached, this is the wrong side and these are the right sides. I flipped this, so I need to cut that out. And the great thing is that I caught it. It happens. But like I said, when you're doing this with fabric that is like a very light, and usually like a very whitish fabric, and this is actually gray, but it's so light and it's like whitish, when it was printed onto the fabric and the fabric was white, they look the same on both sides. So because they look the same on both sides, I wasn't paying attention. And I ended up sewing what we would call the pretty side to the other side. Some in the old days, we said the right side to the wrong side. But there are people who, with some fabrics, have said that the other side looked better than what was originally, what it was originally meant for. Now, I have a little bit of a challenge here, and I can get that, but it's just taking me a little bit of time to find that seam because I did that back stitch. So I have just a little bit that I need to get out, and I don't want to create a hole. So I'm just trying to get in there and get that out. And it's going to come. It's just taking me a minute. There we go. Okay, so Jennifer, pay attention this time, and let's put these two together the way they should go. And there we go. Okay. But again, mistakes happen. And I know that, not that I intend to make the mistake, but sometimes I like to make the mistake. I acknowledge the mistake because it's like it just happens. And it happens to the best of us. And when it happens, that's what we have seam rippers for. Okay. Now, it should be right. Yes. Okay, and we'll press this last one. And then flip this over and just make sure it's nice and flat. Okay. So I'm getting thread all over me. So you can kind of see this. There's like this little lift, if you will, at the tops, like right here. You can kind of hear it. And that's what I'm going to use to nest those seams together so that they lock in. And if they lock in, they stay straight. They should stay straight. So these are going towards the sashing. And in theory, this would be the sashing and these long strips would be, or where the blocks are, these are going away from the sashing. So I'm going to need some clips. And I'm going to line my seams up. And then I can use my finger to kind of moosh them a little bit, like kind of push them together so that they lock or nest. Do the same thing on the other side. Hope get those in place. Clip so they nest. We'll do the same thing for each one. So we're doing one side so far, and then when we come back, we'll do the other. It doesn't make a difference if you start with row 1, row 2, whichever row order you're going in. What will matter is to make sure that you're putting them in the right direction that you want them to go into. And remember I said the way I wanted this set up was that orange and red were on the top of each row. Okay. And because I want orange and red on the top of each row, that means that right now I am working on row 2. What will be row 2. So the other block is going to go on top of that, and the orange and red is going to be up top. Hello, hello, everyone. We are working on the Happy Days quilts, and it is from straightstitching.com, Tiffany Bynum, and we are working on the sashing. So there is a video prior to this one where we worked on the block. The block is made up completely of flying geese. In the video, I worked on one block. I did not work on several blocks because they are the same block over and over and over again. So here is the block here for anyone who's just coming in. And so this was what the block looks like, and I needed 16 of these. For anyone who is new to quilting, a flying geese block is the name of a block, and it looks like this. Almost like when geese fly south, I think. Is it south? No, north? Well, they fly south at one point, north at another. But they fly south for the winter. So when they are flying, they usually fly in this formation, but these are called flying geese. And so we made one block because if you can make one, you can make all 16. And we showed how to make them 4 at a time rather than one by one. So now we're adding the sashing in between the blocks. And this is how the directions for the pattern go. You are not obligated to put sashing in there, but if you don't put the sashing in there, it will change the dimension of your blocks. So if I don't want to add the sashing, then I'm going to lose so many inches. So I'm either going to have a smaller quilt, or I can add an extra block. A pattern to me is a guide. It is not the end all be all. So they will suggest colors, they will suggest fabrics, and it doesn't mean that you have to use them. So for example, this pattern said that I could use, was it this pattern or was the other one? Well, let me not say this pattern. There are some patterns that'll say you can use fat quarters. There's nothing wrong with using a half yard of fabric. There's nothing wrong with using scraps. So you have to adjust if you are adjusting from their pattern, but you can absolutely use something else. Now you need the amount of fabric that they're saying to use. So if they tell you that you need 3 yards of fabric, you might be able to get away with like 2 and 3/4. You might be able to get away with 2.5, depending on the cuts and the changes. But for the most part, you're going to need the dimensions that the person suggests that makes the pattern. But how you make up that 3 yards is up to you. So for example, if I didn't have enough of this background gray, I could have made this sashing a different color. It would change the way that the quilt looked, but I could have used a different color. So I could have made darker gray sashings in between here. It wouldn't have been the end of the world. It's not going to give me the same result as what's pictured, but it would allow me to use the same techniques. Okay, so this is on here. Of course, I'm going to press this. And now this is lined up. So I have everything lined up. I didn't have to do all that folding and putting everything together to get it to be the length that I needed it to be. It is already lined up. So the great thing is now, and because the seams don't cross, I can iron this all at one time rather than taking it to the iron right now. But I now can take this piece. Remember, I want the red and the I want the red and the orange up top. So now I can line this up. I don't have to start off that first one with a clip, but again, I'm lining my seams up. I'm going to lock them in or nest and then clip. And if you like to live rogue, or what I like to call dangerously, you can absolutely not clip anything because these should line up correctly, but I like to make sure that everything does what it's supposed to do. So I take the time to clip. And the great thing is, again, other than seeing those seams in there, everything is the same color. And like I said, originally when I looked at that, I was like, look, I could do this. But I decided to follow directions. But if you prefer to work with a longer strip, you absolutely could do that. And the difference with this way also is that if your quilt is wider than your fabric, so fabric typically after you cut the selvages off is somewhere around 40 to about 44 inches, depending on your fabric, wide. So if the quilt, let's say, is 50 inches wide, then you're going to have to piece together one of all of your sashing, which means that you're going to have a seam somewhere in there that is just a little diagonal and it's a little off. So you may want things to be uniform, and this is another way to ensure that it's uniform. So again, when I sat back and thought about it, I said it made sense to piece the strip together using the same format that we use, block, sash, but this time we're using strips and we're doing sash, that little corner square, sash, corner square, sash, corner square, because everything lines up neatly and it looks uniform. Okay. So we're going to take the first two ends and we'll put those together. And like I said, this is going to be the same thing throughout, so I don't have to go beyond this point for the video, because we would be doing the same thing for the next 2 rows. So I need 2 more pieces of those sashings. One, two. To join, I need 1 to bring the other 2 together, because I'll do the same thing. I'm going to take rows 3 and 4, put them together like I did 1 and 2, and then I will combine the 1, 2 set with the 3, 4 set with that final strip, and then it would be finished. But like I said, I don't have to do all of that in this video to keep it within a certain time frame, because it's the same repetitive thing. So no one would need, you could just replay the video. You don't have to watch a 2-hour video to see the same steps over and over and over again. And I do have this facing up this time, so that again, it allows me to see for those points. Because again, if I'm not going rogue with this, I like to call it rogue or living dangerously. If I'm not doing that with this one, and it doesn't matter if I'm cutting some of those points off, I'm not worried about where it hits. But if I'm trying to line that up, then I absolutely want to see it the entire time. But when we're doing it this way, we need to take our time at those seams, because we do want to make sure that the seams are not pushing back towards us and then causing them to twist. So I come up to the seam, I can lift my foot up just to get it to go under there. Sometimes it'll go by itself. Okay. Thank you for liking, commenting, and sharing. Liking, and commenting, and subscribing. I appreciate you. Okay. We're almost done this row or this section. And again, I want to take my time. Now I have nails, so I can get up under there, but I want to make sure my foot is off that pedal, because I don't even want the machine to go through my nails. And it probably wouldn't go through it. It'll probably crack it, but I still don't want that either. So I can get there under there with a nail. I could use an awl and just kind of point it under, some sort of pointer, but just lift your foot up, get it to go under. Like I said, lift your foot if you need to, of the sewing machine foot, and it will go. Lift up. I'll tell you, you talk about bobbin chicken. Let's talk about spool chicken. And I am going to cut that. Okay, whoops. Cut that off. Didn't mean to do that. Is that on the top thread? Yep. And so I could have saved it, but that's how much I have left. So let me just wrap that around there. I could use it for something. I don't know. Okay. So we'll press this out. Here's this thread here. We'll press that out, but you can see how that lines up right in there, but it keeps everything nice and aligned. So now that when we're looking at it, everything lines up the way that I need it to. And so that's just a better result than if I would have tried to jimmy everything together. So this just helps to do it this way. You could do it whichever way you like. If you want to measure those seams, you want to measure the sides from side to side, you absolutely could do that. But I absolutely could appreciate that once I thought about it, and I was like, oh, let me do it that way. Okay. Who would have thought wear a black shirt on the video? So I'm getting every thread. It's like a black shirt is like a thread magnet. And again, we're just pressing those seams. I'm pressing the seams toward the sashing. To get those seams nice and flat. And again, they're not going to be 100% flat because I can't see if it's folding from this side. And so when I get to the other side, I just give it a good press on that side because now I know my seams are going in the right direction. So now I can concentrate on getting that seam flat. And it just likes to fold sometimes on you. Sometimes it does exactly what it's supposed to do. I am kind of sort of pulling the fabric just a little bit, and I'm not like pulling it because you can see my hand is just like holding it down, and that's just to help it to make sure that it is flat as could be. But I don't need to pull because if you pull, you wave, you warp. You don't want to do that. So now I can flip this over, and then now I can give it another good press on this side and just kind of use the side of that iron to push the seam a little bit so that I can reassure the fact that I possibly have a flat earth seam. Now I will take this to the ironing board, but I'll share with you. I'll use like this is faultless. And if I just give that like a light spritz, what I can do is use the starch, much like you would with a shirt, and that starch will help to flatten those seams. I don't have to do this right now. I can wait until the end, get it to my ironing board, the big one, and then press the whole thing out once it's finished just to make sure those seams are flat. So I don't have to do it right this second, but just as a point of reference, if I wanted to get a really flat seam, and it really doesn't matter for this part because I just want to make sure at the end that everything is nice and flat when I get ready to quilt it. But I can, so I'll use the starch at that time, but you could absolutely starch as you go. And we're just, like I said, just going along and just kind of pushing those edges just to make sure that it is straight. And I have thread that's sticking. I like to catch them sometimes when I see them, opposed to waiting until the end. I'll catch it while I'm quilting. I'll catch a lot of those threads. But sometimes I like to, if I can catch them now, I can catch them now. Okay, and again, I can work on my, work with my, it's gonna come to me, my starch. So, like, I'm just gonna keep seeing threads. I don't know why I'm pulling them off. So you can see the 2 rows that are done so far. This is, of course, not turned in row, it's turned in columns now. There are some spaces that I do need to press a little bit better, but like I said, I'll get to my machine, to my iron board, and I'll press them. But you can see that we have joined 8 blocks together. We have 8 more blocks to join together, and then to join everything together to make 16. And Jennifer, stop picking at the little threads. Okay. But thank you again for joining in today. So we worked on taking the block, adding the sashing with to the blocks, and then adding the blocks together to create the rows. Then once we had the rows together, then we added the sashing in between. So we have the sashing that's acting like it were the block. It's in the place of the block. And then it's because in a sense, like even this way, there's a block, sashing, block. This way it's a block, sashing, block, right? So it's the sashing, this little corner square, and then another piece of sashing to bring those rows together. So I think it's coming together quite colorfully. I love the way that looks so far, and I can't wait to finish this. So we are going to finish the rest of this offline as I get more threads on me. We'll finish the rest of this offline. I will get the other 2 rows done and combine the whole thing. And then we will add borders. So I will be adding a white border, and then I will be adding a colorful border, or another color border. I haven't decided which one yet. So I'll have to make a decision for the border, and then we'll be finished. So look forward to a part 3. So part 3 will be all about the borders. So thank you for joining me today or tonight, for this portion for adding the sashing. First video was about creating the block. The second one was about adding the sashing. The third one will be about adding the borders. And then we'll be finished with this quilt top. Again, this is Happy Days by Straight Stitching. I will provide all of that information in the description below. For those of you who are watching it live, just give me about 24 hours. It shouldn't take that to get the information in for you so that you have it. And hopefully you'll choose to make the Happy Days quilt as well. So thank you again, and have a great evening or day or whatever time it is on your side of the globe.